Fresh Laundry was a lyric that I wrote in my notes in my iPhone, where I keep all my lyric and conceptual ideas. And I think it was 2018 or 17, and I was really sick at the time, and I couldn't sleep, so I went in the bath, and I remember just like the fan of the bathroom being super loud and looking at the floor, and it looked like kind of dirty, and the towels, I think I wiped my face with a towel, and it smelled kind of like mildewy, and I was just like, I want to be near fresh laundry. Like, I just thought that, so I wrote it down. And I guess I was just thinking about like how my mom always managed to keep everything so clean and organized, and I just like felt like I wasn't able to do that as an adult, and I just longed for like that feeling of being taken care of, but also recognize that I'd made decisions that had led to this point, and that it was now all my responsibility, and I couldn't go back. So that's what inspired the original lyric that I wrote in my notes. Then cut to like 2 years later in Sweden, first day of writing with Oscar Gores and James Allen, who ultimately became the key writers and producer for the entire record. And it was our first day writing together. I didn't even know if we were going to be writing for my project or for pitching for someone else. And I arrived at the studio super jet lagged, and they said they wanted to write for me. So I said, well, I have this wacky lyric that I remembered this morning, and I'd set a melody to it. I sang it a cappella, and they just like accepted it, which was really cool, because in a lot of Los Angeles writing rooms, I feel like if I'd said I want to be near fresh laundry, it's been too many years of not folding, people would have been like, that's cool. Is it a love song? Like, what about these 4 chords? Like, what's the chorus gonna be? Like, could it be something about like love or heartbreak? And like just basically moving it into a direction that undermines the complexity of the lyric. And I felt like musically they did something that day that completely complemented the complexity of the lyric, and they allowed me to sort of like follow this train of thought in my mind, and yeah, and a very fresh and unique sound resulted that day, and lyric that I was super excited about. And it was just it was like kind of the birth of the sound of what became Cape God. And yeah, Fresh Laundry was the first song written, so I thought it should be like the first song that was released and the first song on the album as well.
What I particularly love about that song is the way you do something weird with scales and keys, to the effect that it totally resolves in the last moment of the song. I don't know if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so it's funny because that morning when I'd come up with the da 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 da, like that melody, it was just in the air. I didn't have any chords underneath it, but in my head I was hearing a blues scale, like a minor scale. But then when Oscar started producing it and we added in the backup vocals on the second verse to go, ah, then all of a sudden this major chord was implied. And it just started to sound kind of like, almost like Brazilian or something. Like it was this whole other flavor in there. And I found that harmonically so interesting. We all did. So it kind of switches back and forth through those 2 scales. I mean, depending on how you want to analyze it. I mean, it's all in one key, but you're implying a major chord over a minor scale. Anyway, it's musically very interesting because of that.
Totally. And then last question on that song, there's a lyric that's something like round my neck and hand thin jewelry, which sounds very specific.
Yeah.
What is that all about?
That was James's idea. He was the other writer. Round my neck and head thin jewelry. So that's just the idea of like gorgeous, delicate little pieces of jewelry draped around my limbs.
And how does that tie into this idea of like sort of like wanting to go back to what your mom was providing in like childhood?
Well, I was definitely thinking of like my mom's jewelry when we wrote that lyric, and just the idea of an adult that has friends and a social life and a clean house and a steady income, and it's very like, it's kind of like wanting things as an adult, but also just like the rest of the record, has very juvenile feelings in it, like just a longing for uh, acceptance and love and like family. And yeah, so I think a lot of the songs are both written from the perspective of me being a grown woman now and having reflected and being very mature, but also diving into feelings that I had as a teenager and as a young adult, of like longing.